Hello there, I am Steve, and this is a special edition of Unboxing the Boxes, the Star Wars collection. Why is it special? Because I have hit 200 subscribers to this channel. I would like to thank those of you who have taken the time not only to watch these videos, but to take the time to hit that subscribe button. You know, it's down there somewhere. It only took 25 videos to hit 100, which I thought was doing pretty good. But it only took another 13 videos to make it to 200. So once again, I would like to thank those of you who have taken the time to subscribe to my channel. I hope I live up to what you would like to see of this channel in the future. Now, in this episode, number 38, what I would like to do is share my collection of the earliest Star Wars novels that I have in my collection, and to show you a special gift that I have recently received. I think you're going to like that. I have been collecting Star Wars novels all the way back since 1977. I have a feeling you are going to enjoy seeing some of these books. So let's get started. But quickly, before I do, I just want to invite you once again to like the video, to comment below as to which books you like or which ones you have in your collection, and to subscribe to this channel. Are you ready? Let's begin. The very first book I have, the very first book I ever bought about Star Wars, of course, could only be one book when you think about it. Remember, I said back to 1977? Yes, it is the novelization of Star Wars, From the Adventures of Luke Skywalker. This is not the very first edition. This happens to be the second printing of it. So this one came out in 1977 instead of 1976. But yeah, I think everybody's pretty much familiar with the original book here. Just real quick, like on the back, it says Luke Skywalker was a 20-year-old who lived and worked on his uncle's farm on the remote planet of Tatooine, and he was bored beyond belief. He yearned for adventures out amongst the stars, adventures that would take him beyond the farthest galaxies to distant and alien worlds. And think about it, Luke Skywalker went on to many distant and alien worlds. So that is the first one, the first novel that I ever bought with Star Wars. In fact, this is one of the earliest things that I have in my collection, period. So, there we have it. Star Wars, The Adventures, or From the Adventures of Luke Skywalker. Now, between the first and second movie, Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, or as some of you know it, A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, there was a book that came out to try to keep some interest in Star Wars. And it came out in 1978. And some of you may remember this. It was called Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Yes, this was from the further adventures of Luke Skywalker, based on the characters and situations created by George Lucas. Written by Alan Dean Foster, this book tried to continue the adventures of Luke and Leia. Unfortunately, when Alan Dean Foster wrote this, he did not know yet that Luke and Leia were brother and sister. So there was a little bit of some what we now consider awkward situations. Just reading the first paragraph on the back here. Stranded on a jungle planet, Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia found themselves desperately racing Imperial stormtroopers to claim a gem that had mysterious powers over the Force. Woohoo, sounds good. If I remember correctly, it has been many, many years since I've read this book, but if I remember correctly, I did enjoy this book. It was pretty good. Let's move on to the next one, because the third book of my collection just happens to be from 1980. And what came out in 1980? The Empire Strikes Back. Written by Donald F. Glut. Based on a story by George Lucas. So, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Han, Luke, Princess Leia's story didn't end with the destruction of the Death Star. It continues. Though they had won a significant battle, the war between the rebels and the Empire had really just begun. Now, several months later, the rebels have established an outpost on the frozen wasteland of Hoth. But even that icy backwater planet, they could not escape the evil Darth Vader's notice for long. One thing I kind of, I liked the book. It was really good. And of course, there was a companion book that could go with this. What would that companion book be? Well, it also came out in 1980. Yeah, 1980. Written by Alan Arnold. And it was Once Upon a Galaxy, the Journal of Making of The Empire Strikes Back. Yes, even in the early days of Star Wars, I enjoyed learning about how they made these movies. And besides the little videos you'd catch once in a while on TV, this was the big source to go to at that time. It even had a few photos in it. Granted, they were black and white photos, but photos nonetheless. Not very many, but enough to keep you interested. From the very first shots to the final cast wrap-up party, in a spellbinding day-by-day journal, in-depth interviews with all the major players, their views on their careers and the characters they portray, and conversations with the producer, director, and special effects wizards who have revolutionized the film industry, creating one of the most dazzling, believable space fantasies of all time. You wanted to know how they made the movies? This was a book to go find out! And yes, I bought it, I read it, I enjoyed it. What's the next one? Well, I had to wait a couple more years, but then you know what came out? Return of the Jedi! It was a dark time for the Rebel Alliance. Han Solo, frozen in carbonite, has been delivered onto the hands of the vile gangster Jabba the Hutt. Determined to rescue him, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, and Lando Calrissian launch a hazardous mission against Jabba's Tatooine stronghold. There we go. The novelization, and this novelization really was kind of neat. It even had a few color photos in the middle of the book. So not bad. We're up to $2.95 now for a novel. Not too bad. And of course, there was a companion book for this. Yes, there was. The Making of The Return of the Jedi. And this one was written by John Philip Peacher. The Return of the Jedi book was written by James Caan. I think a few of you might know what else James Caan wrote, but I'm not going to tell you right now. But he was a fairly good writer for Star Wars. So here we have it, Return of the Jedi, taking you behind the scenes, interviewing the actors and so forth. Here again, we do have various pictures within, although these pictures are only black and white. But there is a fair amount of pictures in here, really, when you think about it. Nice thick book. This one's actually thicker than any of the other books here, if you think about it or see it. Although it's pretty close to, just a little thicker than the Journal of the Making of The Empire Strikes Back. So, there we have it, the first 3 movies taken care of. But of course, it was going to be a long time before they made any other movies. You know, like decades. What were they going to do in the meantime? George Lucas had to make money, you know. He had to eat. He had a family. He had to survive. Let's make some more books, all right? What do? We come out with the Han Solo Trilogy. Oh, yeah. So what's the first one? Well, in 1979, we got Han Solo's Revenge. Just real quick, there's always work for a spacefaring freighter captain who doesn't ask awkward questions. And Han Solo quickly got a job that would pay him a cool 10,000 credits. It would also, he discovered as soon as he made planetfall to pick up his cargo, earn him and Chewbacca summary execution. The corporate sector authority could overlook many crimes, but the slave trade carried with it mandatory capital punishment. What did Han Solo and Chewbacca get themselves into? I'm not going to tell you. Go find the book. Read it. You'll enjoy it. Yes, it is not a high-fluting book. It's just a fun little fantasy. But it was the first in the trilogy. The second of the trilogy came out actually in April of 1979. The paperback came out in October of 1979. Here again, the paperback Well, this one was only $1.95. And the first one was $2.25. The second one was cheaper than the first one. Probably because it was a little bit thinner. Quicker adventure, you know, to read. So what happens to Han Solo at Star's End? Well, Han Solo was a tramp freighter captain, a smuggler, and a freelance lawbender when it suited him. Together with his Wookiee pal Chewbacca, he roamed the galaxy in the starship Millennium Falcon, owing nothing to anyone, human, droid, or otherwise. If the Authority took a dim view of some of his activities, well, that was the Authority's problem. Or so Han Solo thought. So the second one, Han Solo at Star's End. What is the third one? Well, this one came out in 1980, and it is Han Solo and the Lost Legacy. What happens in this book? Well, the fabled horde of the mad tyrant Zim was beyond measure. It was also, as far as Han Solo and his Wookiee partner Chewbacca were concerned, strictly legendary. But the pleadings of the old space bum who had once saved his life, plus the fact that a trifling misunderstanding had set the deadliest gunman in the galaxy on his tail, making a secret expedition to almost any place seem highly desirable, were enough to grab Han Solo's interest. There again, another quick little story about Han Solo and Chewbacca. First time in print. Now, of course, if we've got a trilogy of Han Solo, there's got to be a trilogy of Han Solo's buddy, right? Which buddy am I talking about? Well, that would be Lando Calrissian, yes! There also was a trilogy of Lando Calrissian. And the first of these, called Lando Calrissian and the Mine Harp of Shara, came out in July of 1983. What do we have in this book? Well, it says flight into danger. Gambler, rogue, and con artiste, Lando Calrissian was born with a well-developed taste for good life. More comfortable at the dealer's end of a fast shuffle than the rear end of a blaster, Lando always had his sensor scanning for the chance to pick up easy credits. So when he heard the planets of the Rafta system were practically buried in ancient alien treasure, he hopped aboard the Millennium Falcon and brushed up on his rusty astrogation. He never stopped to think that someone might be conning the con man. Yep, so this one kind of sets up for the trilogy coming up. So what's the second book of the trilogy? Well, it would be Lando Calrissian and the Flame Wind of Asean. This one came out in October 1983. In fact, this whole trilogy came out in 1983, just at different times throughout the year. In this one, what happens? A solar system with little more than luxury hotels, catering to the underemployed, filthy rich. The Asean was every gambler's dream come true. And so it was for Lando Calrissian, gambler, rogue, and con artist. Until he broke the gambler's cardinal rule: never beat a cop at a high-stakes game of chance. Yeah, Lando got himself in trouble with this one, but of course, if Lando didn't get in trouble, we wouldn't have a book, would we? He's got to get in trouble, figure out how to get out of the trouble, and then see if he can get out of the trouble to make a good book. What is the third one in the series that came out in December of the same year for only $2.50? Well, it is Lando Calrissian and the Star Cave of Tahmaka. So what happens in this one? Well, for a year, Lando Calrissian and FIFA Ra, his 5-armed robot astrogator, had roamed the space in the Millennium Falcon, seeking or creating opportunities to turn an easy, but not too dishonest, credit. But now their partnership seems doomed. Yes, sir, there we go. So there we have our 3 books of the Lando series. And as you could tell from reading the back of the books here, these books actually take place before the Han Solo trilogy because Lando still has his Millennium Falcon yet during these. So some worthwhile books there to read if you can get your hand on them. But there's one other book that doesn't go back as far as these books, but still takes place right after, well, it takes place between Return of the Jedi, The Empire Strikes Back, What would that book be? Well, that would be Shadows of the Empire. Now, Shadows of the Empire came out quite a bit later. It was 1996 when this book and the whole Shadows of the Empire series of figures and comics and books came out at the same time. Yes, there was even a soundtrack, if I remember correctly. But I enjoyed this book. I thought these were great characters, and to tell the truth, I think this would make a fairly decent movie if somebody would get the gumption to do that. Caesar or Sizor, or however you want to pronounce it, I think I've heard it pronounced a couple different ways. He made for a very good villain within this book. Yeah, it gets a little cringy once in a while, but hey, Star Wars does that once in a while. So there are the books I'd like to share with you today. But I also have one special thing I would like to show you. A lot of people that I know that I like Star Wars, as you've probably seen from watching these videos. Well, this last week I had somebody bring me something that wasn't even on my radar and never thought about it. In fact, the reason I never thought about it is because this is not something you could buy in a store per se, and it's because it's something somebody made. In fact, one of my cousins made this for her son, who was a big Star Wars fan, and I think still is a big Star Wars fan. Anyway, it is a table runner. So it's made out of nice cloth here, and you can lay it out on your table, put your knickknacks and stuff on it, or your Star Wars items. On the one side, we have the Star Wars logo plastered all over the place. I like that. Looks very sharp. But there is a second side. If you wanted to turn around and use it the other side, you could be looking at multiple C-3POs. So yes, very well done. The stitching is really nice, and if I had the right table to put this on, you could be willing to bet that this would be on display. So I would like to thank my cousin and her son for doing this. I really do appreciate it. Maria, thanks again. And someday bring your son over so he can see the collection. He hasn't been here yet, folks. I got a feeling he'd get a kick out of seeing it. Well, that ends the show today. What'd you think of the books? I enjoyed those books during the early days of Star Wars. In fact, now that I've brought them out, I'd kind of like to read them again. And just to see how things have changed and how Disney might have taken some of these bits and pieces from these books of Lando Calrissian and Han Solo and used them in the movies that they made. I know a few things made it into it. Not very many maybe, but a few things did. So once again, before we end the video, I would like to invite you all to like the video if you liked it, to share it with your friends. After all, it helps get more views, which helps the algorithm go up. And you know what else helps the algorithm go up? Subscribing to this channel. How fast do you think we can get this channel up to 300 views? Can we do it even faster than the 13 views it took to get from 100 to 200? Let's see if we can beat it. Subscribe! Hit that button! And until next time, may the Force be with you, and keep collecting!